People don't usually disappear without a trace. They leave something behind. A shoe, a phone, a scream, a mistake. But when people vanish in the woods, they don't leave panic. They leave silence. No struggle. No final call for help. Sometimes, not even fear. A 12-year-old boy falls behind on a mountain trail. He's told to stay on the path. He doesn't cry out. He doesn't run. The last thing he does is take a photo of himself, alone, in the dark. 5 grown men drive to a basketball game and somehow end up an hour in the wrong direction, deep in frozen mountains. Their car still works. They have food. They have each other. Yet they walk away, into the trees, and one by one they forget how to survive. A teenage boy says he'll be home in 10 minutes. Instead, he stops walking, stands still, then suddenly runs. Not toward safety, but straight into the woods. Witnesses say he put a finger to his lips. Shh. As if something nearby didn't want to be heard. 2 young women hike a trail meant for tourists. Days later, their phones show dozens of failed emergency calls. Their camera captures photos taken deep at night, flash after flash, as if they're trying to see something that refuses to stay visible. So here's the question no one wants to ask. Why do so many people leave safe paths? Why do they ignore help? Why do they abandon cars, food, warmth, and logic? What if the woods don't chase people? What if they invite them? Because the most disturbing part isn't that these people were lost. It's that something made them comfortable staying lost. Welcome to Echoes Beyond Midnight, the woods that remember people. There is something ancient about forests, not just old, aware. When people vanish in cities, we look for witnesses, cameras, suspects. But when someone disappears into the woods, the forest becomes the only witness. And it never talks. The cases you're about to hear aren't just disappearances. They are moments where people crossed an invisible line, stepped into a place where rules change, logic dissolves, and survival instincts begin to fail. Because the most disturbing part isn't that these people were lost. It's that something made them stay lost. Slor. Chlor. Slor. Slor. The boy who fell behind. In the summer of 1991, Mount San Gorgonio stood tall and indifferent, its rocky spine cutting into the sky above Southern California. To most hikers, it was just another challenging peak. To 12-year-old Jared Negretti, it was supposed to be an achievement. A Boy Scout camping trip. 14 boys. One summit. Jared was smaller than the others. Heavier, slower. And mountains are cruel to anyone who can't keep up. As the troop climbed higher, the air thinning with every step, Jared began to lag behind. No one mocked him. No one pushed him. They just kept walking. At around 6 p.m., less than 1,000 feet from the summit, another group of hikers noticed something that would later haunt them for the rest of their lives. A boy. Alone. Cutting down switchbacks. They warned him, told him to stay on the trail. Then they told the scoutmaster. The scoutmaster, experienced, confident, said he'd collect Jared on the way down. That was the last moment anyone ever saw Jared Negretti alive. The _______. When the scoutmaster descended, calling Jared's name into the growing shadows, there was no answer. No footprints, no cries, no movement, just wind scraping against stone. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the scoutmaster escorted the remaining boys back to camp and then did something that would later be described as heroic and horrifying. He hiked 5 miles in total darkness to get help. By the time authorities arrived, Mount San Gorgonio had already begun to erase the boy. Search and rescue teams flooded the area. Sheriff's deputies, helicopters with infrared scanners, men on horseback. They searched 130 square miles of brutal rocky wilderness. Days passed. Then something surfaced. A footprint. One single print believed to match Jared's high-top tennis shoe. Nearby, they found beef jerky wrappers, candy wrappers, and a camera. The camera was the worst part. _war_, the final photograph. The film roll held 12 photographs. Most were innocent. Landscapes, mountains, memories, but the last photo stopped everyone cold. A self-portrait. Jared's face illuminated by flash in the darkness, his expression unreadable. No scream, no panic captured in the frame. Just a boy alone on a mountain that doesn't care if you live or die. Searchers theorized he may have slipped. But if he had fallen, they would have found him. They considered a bear attack. But there was no blood, no drag marks, no torn clothing. Abduction? Possible, but unlikely in such terrain, in such silence. Weeks passed, 45,000 man-hours, 3,000 searchers, and then nothing. 3 decades later, Mount San Gorgonio has never given Jared back. Some locals say the mountain doesn't like stragglers. 5 Mayat Juru. 5 men who chose the wrong road. On February 24, 1978, 5 men left Yuba County to watch a basketball game. They never came home. What makes this case disturbing isn't just what happened. It's what shouldn't have happened. They were prepared. They were excited. They had plans for the next day. And yet, their car was found an hour in the wrong direction, deep in the Plumas National Forest. The road leading there wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. The car wasn't broken. It wasn't sabotaged. It was simply abandoned. And then the snow came. The man they ignored. One witness, Joseph Shawns, reported something that made investigators uneasy. Stranded in the snow, suffering a heart attack, he saw flashlight beams outside his car. 5 men. He called for help. They didn't answer. They didn't approach. They didn't even acknowledge him. They simply vanished into the trees. Families later insisted this made no sense. These men would have helped anyone, unless something else already had their attention. The trailer in the woods. Months later, when the snow melted, the truth emerged slowly. A broken window. A Forest Service trailer. Inside was Ted Weir, dead from starvation, surrounded by food, wrapped in blankets, a fireplace beside him, unused, warm clothes nearby, untouched. It was as if he forgot how to survive, as if the woods had drained something essential from him. 20 miles away, bones of the others were found. Except one, Gary Mathias. Only his shoes remained. No body. No explanation. Other sore. Other sore. Other sore. Other sore. The forest didn't just kill them, it separated them. By the time Craig Freer vanished in June of 2004, no one was thinking about monsters. They were thinking about arguments. Teenage rebellion. Broken hearts. Craig was everything parents hope for. Popular, athletic, responsible. A kid with a future so bright it almost seemed unfair. And yet, on June 27th, Craig walked into the woods and was never seen again. Not stumbled, not chased. Walked the lie that didn't matter. Craig had been lying. He'd lost his job at the Price Chopper supermarket weeks earlier and never told his parents. Every day, he'd put on his uniform, grab his keys, and leave the house pretending to go to work. But lies like that don't make people disappear. On the day Craig vanished, his mother watched him leave, uniform in hand. She later went shopping at the same store. Craig wasn't there. That's when the truth unraveled. Angry and confused, his parents called his girlfriend, unaware she was now his ex. Craig was with her. Upset. Emotional. heartbroken. His mother told him to come home immediately. Craig said he'd be home in 10 minutes. That should have been the end of it. But then, something happened. The moment everything changed, Craig said goodbye to his ex-girlfriend and walked toward his car. She watched from her window. Halfway there, he stopped, just stood still. Then suddenly, he ran. Not toward the car, not toward the road. He ran away, in the opposite direction. Like something behind him had moved. Like something had noticed him. Later, teenagers reported seeing Craig walking along the railroad tracks behind the apartment complex. When they called out to him, he didn't respond. Instead, he turned, put a finger to his lips, shh, and walked into the woods. That gesture still chills investigators to this day, because you don't shush people unless you're afraid of being heard. The woods without echoes. Police searched everything. Dogs, helicopters, railroad lines, the Mohawk River. Nothing. No scent trail, no footprints, no sign of struggle. It was as if Craig crossed a threshold where normal rules no longer applied. Years later, a witness came forward claiming to have seen Craig sitting in the passenger seat of a car, heading north, away from home. But that lead went nowhere. Craig Freer simply became another name whispered among locals whenever someone mentions the woods behind Scotia. Some say the forest there feels crowded, even when you're alone. Two girls who took the wrong path. In April of 2014, Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon arrived in Panama to celebrate graduation. They were careful, responsible, planned, which is what makes what happened next so disturbing. They went hiking one day early. No guide, no backup, just a trail near Boquete, and the jungle beyond it. When the family's dog returned alone that evening, everyone knew something was wrong. The jungle doesn't give warnings. It just closes behind you. 10 days of silence. Phone records later revealed something terrifying. Chris and Lisanne tried calling emergency services again and again. No signal. No connection. Just unanswered calls echoing into nothing. But the photos were worse. The night photos. Out of 100 images, 90 were taken in complete darkness. Between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., flash after flash. Branches, rocks, the back of Chris's head. Blood visible in her hair. No selfies. No messages. No proof of life. Just evidence of fear. Some believe Lisanne was using the camera flash to see. Others believe someone else was holding it. What unsettles investigators most is this. The photos don't look accidental. They look deliberate, as if someone wanted to document something or distract something. The shoe in the river. When remains were finally found, they didn't make sense. A backpack, dry, undamaged, sitting by a river. Inside it, phones, money, camera. Nearby, a hiking boot, with a foot still inside. Bones discovered separately, as if the jungle had taken them apart piece by piece. Authorities insist it was an accident. But locals know better. They say there are places in the jungle where people stop being people, where panic turns into obedience, where survival instincts just shut off. The pattern no one talks about. Different countries, different years, different victims. But the same strange details repeat. People leave safe paths. They ignore help. They abandon vehicles. They forget how to survive. They separate. And most disturbingly, they don't act afraid. They act guided, as if the woods are gently pulling them deeper. When survival instincts shut off, ask any survival expert one simple question. What's the first thing a lost person should do? Make a fire. Stay put. Use resources. Signal for help. Now ask another question. Why do so many people who vanish in forests do none of these things? No fire. No shelter. No attempts to stay warm, even when supplies are nearby. It's almost as if they forget. The silence that changes people. Deep in the woods, silence behaves differently. It's not just quiet, it's absorbing. Sound doesn't travel the same. Thoughts don't either. Search and rescue workers have reported something unsettling for decades, usually only after a few drinks or when microphones are off. The forest feels full, not crowded, occupied. People who spend too much time alone in deep wilderness often report the same symptoms: disorientation without panic, sudden obedience to strange impulses, the urge to leave trails, the feeling of being watched without fear, a calm acceptance of bad decisions. This isn't hysteria, it's documented. Why they leave the trail. Trails are human ideas. They are scars cut through something much older. Forests don't recognize them. And some researchers believe that when a person becomes exhausted, dehydrated, or emotionally overwhelmed, the brain switches into a primitive state, one where the forest feels more right than the path. You stop thinking like a person. You start thinking like prey. That's when people step off trails, cut switchbacks, walk into undergrowth they would normally avoid. That's when they're hardest to find. The missing time effect. Another common detail appears in many cases. Missing time. Survivors who are found, rare as they are, often report hours or days they can't account for. Some say they followed voices. Others say they were shown where to go. A few insist they were being helped. One man rescued in the Pacific Northwest whispered to a ranger, "I didn't want to leave. It was warm where I was." He later refused to explain what he meant. Why they don't light fires. Fire is loud. Fire smells. Fire announces you are alive. Animals don't like it, and neither does anything else that might be listening. Some researchers believe people subconsciously avoid fire because something in the environment discourages it. Not through fear, through comfort. It feels unnecessary. Just like Ted Weir, wrapped in blankets, starving next to untouched food, beside a cold fireplace. Not frozen in terror, just passive. The forest that separates. Another pattern repeats again and again. Groups break apart. Even families. Even trained hikers. People wander in opposite directions for no logical reason. Search teams find remains spread miles apart, as if individuals were gently guided away from one another. Because separation makes rescue harder. And silence easier. The ranger who quit talking. A retired National Park ranger once told an interviewer something chilling. Before the clip was quietly removed, he said, "If something wants you lost, you'll never feel chased. You'll feel invited." He refused to elaborate. 2 months later, he declined all further interviews. What the night does to the woods. At night, forests change temperature rapidly. Air settles, sound drops. The darkness becomes thick. This is when most strange behavior happens. The Dutch girl's night photos. Flash after flash. Some believe they were signaling. Others believe they were distracting. Because sudden light can confuse something that hunts by sound or by attention. The question no one wants answered. If these disappearances were accidents, the details would vary. But they don't. They repeat. Across continents. Across decades. Across cultures. Which leads to a terrifying possibility. What if the woods are not empty? Not haunted? Not cursed? But inhabited by something that doesn't need to chase? Something that waits? Something patient enough to let you come to it? The thing that pretends to be safe. Long before national parks had names, before trails, maps, or warning signs, people already knew. Indigenous cultures across the world share eerily similar warnings about forests, despite never having contact with each other. Different names. Same idea. There are places that look empty, but are already occupied. The rule elders never explain. In many native traditions, children were warned about the woods with one simple rule. Never follow what feels familiar if it shouldn't be there. A voice that sounds kind. A path that feels welcoming. a sense of calm when you should be afraid. Because whatever lives there doesn't hunt the way animals do. It doesn't scare you. It soothes you. Why children disappear faster. Children lag behind. They wander. They're curious. But more importantly, they trust. Jared Negrete didn't scream. He didn't run. His last photo shows no terror, just acceptance. Some researchers believe younger minds are easier to influence, not because they're weak, but because they haven't learned suspicion yet. To something ancient, a child feels closer, the familiar feeling. People who vanish often report one thing shortly before they're lost, a sense of being guided, not forced, not chased, helped. Craig Freer didn't look panicked when he ran. He looked urgent, as if responding to something only he could hear, something that didn't want to be overheard, hence the finger to the lips. The forest doesn't rush. Predators rush. The woods don't. They wait for exhaustion, for emotional cracks, for loneliness. That's why people disappear after arguments, after stress, after grief. Your mind gets quieter, and that's when the woods speak the loudest. Why searchers miss them. Search and rescue teams will tell you something unsettling. Sometimes we walk right past where the missing person should be. Dogs lose scent suddenly. Tracks stop mid-step. Infrared finds nothing, as if the person simply stopped being where people are supposed to be. The ones who almost came back. Very few people return. But those who do are never the same. They avoid forests. They hate silence. They refuse to explain. One survivor said only this: "It didn't want to hurt me. It wanted me to stay." The final thought: if these disappearances were random, there would be chaos. Instead, there's consistency. People leaving safety, ignoring help, abandoning survival, not in panic, in calm. So maybe the most terrifying possibility isn't that the woods kill people. Maybe the woods remember people. And once they do, they don't like letting go. So the next time you're hiking, and the trail feels wrong, or the silence feels thick, or you feel strangely comforted by the idea of stepping off the path, don't. Because the woods don't need to chase you. They're perfectly happy, waiting for you to come to them.